Hey, just a quick little intro to the video. Thanks for stopping by, first of all. Um, I hope you enjoy the conversation that I have with my good friend Kit Condor. We talk about, his journey in wrestling and things in life in general. So it was really good to sit down with him and talk. A few things. My camera does go out. Sorry about that. It was unavoidable, and you won't notice it too much, but I had builders on the roof when I was recording it, because of course. Uh, but overall, it was a great time, and I look forward to talking to Kid again.
So what's it like over in South Australia at the moment? Because I understand like around Australia and around the world, things are they're crazy at the moment. So are you handling things well over there?
Yeah, look, it's definitely tough all over. Um, Especially being involved in something like pro wrestling. The whole Corona stuff really made it hard when there was sort of no outlet for us to sort of train or do shows or really anything. It really did completely put us on hold. So I think just like it is anywhere, it's tough all round. Um, I'd like to think that from at least what I've seen in the news, it looks like SA's doing pretty good with behaving themselves and trying to get back on track as quickly as possible. And I guess I'm just super grateful that being in a place like SA, we're able to now put on shows again. So it's still tough. We're still doing all the restrictions and social distancing, but you know um, it does make me feel for places like Melbourne, for example, that don't have the luxury of even being able to like run their shows socially distanced. So I think we're pretty lucky where we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And with everyone here at Talking Wrestling, we've been watching the influx of fans being able to come back to places like Riot City, where it's a smaller number of people. A lot of the capacity for your usual shows aren't as what's the word? They're not as diverse as what they used to be. You had major crowds back earlier in the year before the virus took its major effect. But it's really good to see that the Australian scene is making a return in a healthy way without you know pushing aside
Yeah.
health risks. And it's really good to see that Riot City is one of those companies that are really not just out to make a buck; they're looking after their fans as well. So kudos to you.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's really good to see, and especially like we're seeing it 100%. Like, yeah, the numbers are cut back because of social distancing and all the new COVID rules, but at the same time, we're seeing like unprecedented sellout times. Like, our tickets will go up at RCW and be sold out within the day that they go up, like in a few hours. And that's insane to see. Like, even if our numbers are, our restrictions can only have X amount of people where we used to have, you know, enough room to house two or three times as many, still the idea that tickets go up and people are so just keen to get back to seeing Australian pro wrestling live and in person, that those tickets go up and they're like, I can't afford to miss out on this. And everyone just sells out every event in hours. It's absolutely incredible to see. So, like, obviously, we're not the only ones who missed being in and around wrestling. Like, the fans missed it just as much, if not more. And that's amazing to see that everyone's just so keen to get back around it. And that's everywhere that I go. That's down in ACW as well, where I wrestle semi regularly now, and their shows are selling out within hours as well. It's absolutely amazing. I've got people constantly asking me when they can get to the next like wrestling show, and I tell them, like, unless you're legitimately there when they post that the tickets have gone live, chances are if you see it a day late, the tickets are already sold out. Like, it's incredible that I hope when all of this social distancing stuff is done with, we're getting back to our full capacity and still selling tickets like that. It's really good.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point about that feeling of people just so desperate to see wrestling again, not just the wrestlers, but all the people who maybe back in the day when they missed opportunities to see RCW or ACW live, they now have that opportunity to be like, well, now I can't miss it. I can't miss this again, because what if restrictions come in and I miss the opportunity again? And it's interesting to see how wrestling changes after the fact, when things have settled down again and there's no virus. And with fans being able to come back in, lesser numbers but still safe, it would be really, really cool to see the stories from this later on with fans.
I mean, it's definitely hard to put myself in any sort of shoes trying to imagine what a scenario like this would be like from the other end, because it's just so unheard of. Like, I could never imagine what it's like, but God, it's just, I think a lot of people are just anything is better than nothing. And I love that there are still people who are just as eager to come out to see us even with the social distancing in place. Like, we can't hang around after the shows and take pictures and, sign autographs and stuff. And that sucks, because it's an amazing part of the whole experience. Like, getting able to interact with these people who are like, we came to see you. So to see that those people are just as keen to come out and just watch us wrestle, even though we can't get out amongst them, it's just great to see. Like, the fans' love of obviously our, product is just, it's insane. And I love to see that so much.
It really is fantastic how the community has come together and supported one another. What I wanted to ask you about that, going back to the topic of that spark, that love of wrestling, when you were growing up, what was that for you? What was the catalyst for you deciding there's nothing else in life that I want to do more than wrestling?
Oh, geez. Going back a little bit. I reckon, legitimately, as I don't know, as corny as it probably sounds, when I first discovered wrestling, the very first match I ever saw was something that I didn't expect it to light the fire under me that it did. And I think even at the time, I didn't know that it had lit that fire, but it was just a little spark then that gradually built. And looking back, without that first initial spark, I wouldn't be here now. Like, I remember being like a really little kid, and going back to where I was then, I realized that getting to where I am now was a complete domino effect of completely random circumstances. I started out being a lot younger and being into things like Power Rangers, as a lot of, young kids were. And then from there, somewhere along the line, that interest sort of moved its way into the, more of the ninja combat kind of area. Like, I always loved seeing the Power Rangers, the athletic ability and the flips and stuff. And then when I kind of discovered that ninja movies and stuff like that was all of those parts, I sort of then changed my main interest into God, being a ninja would be the coolest thing, being a kid and being like, oh, I want to be a ninja when I grow up. From there was a little kids movie called The Three Ninjas. It was a movie series, and I loved those movies. And in the third Three Ninjas movie, it starred Hulk Hogan. And at the time, I had no idea who Hulk Hogan was, no idea what wrestling was, but I was obsessed with this movie. And legitimately, my dad told me, oh, that's Hulk Hogan. He's a famous wrestler. And I was like, wrestling? What's that? Being 7 or 8. And he goes, oh, I'll get you a wrestling DVD for your birthday, and you can see what it's all about. and he got me SummerSlam 2006, the show where Hulk Hogan wrestled Randy Orton in oh god, it was just I was just interested initially because it was Hulk Hogan, who was a actor from a ninja movie that I really, really liked. And the first match on that card when I got the DVD was Rey Mysterio versus Chavo Guerrero. And I had no idea who any of these people were. And the first ever wrestler I watched was Rey Mysterio. And I was just like, this is amazing. This guy is incredible. Why is this not the main event? Like, as a kid, just being like, this masked guy is just flipping around the place. He's jumping all over the place. That's incredible. That's what I want to do. Like, from there, I watched that SummerSlam 2006 DVD to absolute death. And from there, I fell in love with wrestling. Rey Mysterio was my favorite wrestler. He was the first ever wrestling figure that I ever got. And I think in a large way that influenced the path that I eventually went down. And I was just like, forever, I want to be like Rey Mysterio, sort of a thing.
Well, I mean, the whole Three Ninjas thing was it's very niche, I guess is a word for it. And that's the avenue that it took for you to fall in love. Like there was, like you said, it was a domino effect of just, it was all these little things that led up to you finding wrestling. And I think it's incredible that wrestling has that effect, that in any sort of medium you can find your way to wrestling. And it's
absolutely.
Yeah. And your moveset as well. Like I think anyone who's watched your matches, for example, against Havoc at an RCW event, you can clearly see the influence that Ray has had on your moveset. Is who else have influence on your moveset in the ring?
Definitely, probably my biggest influences after someone like Rey Mysterio would definitely be like in a little bit on from that time, not by much though, would be John Morrison. I would definitely attribute to being one of my biggest influences for moveset and just like innovative offense, especially. Rob Van Dam as well. Sort of, if there was like a timeline of my favorite wrestlers through different periods of being a wrestling fan, it definitely started out as Rey Mysterio, then Rob Van Dam, then moved on to like John Morrison. And I think John Morrison especially was around the time when I was really discovering other wrestling companies outside of like WWE and even at the time TNA. I really started to branch out from those two companies and realize that there was a whole wide world of indie wrestling. And that's, when I was able to discover things like Lucha Underground, where Johnny Mundo was the name that John Morrison was wrestling under, and, the whole independent circuit. And until then, in my mind, wrestling was just WWE and TNA. And even TNA, I discovered through ex-WWE guys going over there and then me wanting to follow those ex-WWE guys. So I think really getting into, having someone like John Morrison as an influence on me really opened my eyes to the wider world of wrestling, because it really exposed me to so many different, very different styles of wrestling.
And to your point about the your different styles of wrestling that you've grown up and you've found along the way, watching other companies, not just WWE, in, for example, RCW, and is there someone there that you can point to that has helped you mold yourself into who you are today? Someone who is sort of like a helping hand, someone who you can go to for advice, and if you could maybe share a little bit of that advice?
I definitely think one of the probably like backstage, everyone loves to always, you know, push talent to like exceed their limits and like take it to that next level and step it up. And yeah, I definitely couldn't say that it's like one person who does everything, because everyone always is trying to be so supportive of everyone in their own way. To me personally, I've had a lot of people in different stages of being a wrestler who has helped me so much. If I was to pick one name though, I'd definitely say Chris Basso has been an amazing mentor, and not only to me, I would like to say like to the entire locker room. I don't think there's many people going around who can give a speech to a locker room of people and just absolutely light the fire underneath them to believe that they can do absolutely anything. Like, he gives a pep talk like no one I've ever met. And he's always the type of person who will, you know, throw up his hand to say, do you want to come and do a workout with me? And we can, you know, go through some lifting techniques. And if you're struggling with a particular thing in regards to wrestling, he's always more than happy to like hang around and help you out with it. And like, it's really helped, especially when I was fresher and new and felt like I was just so in over my head. Definitely really helped me kind of grasp who I was, why I was there, and where I wanted to go from where I was to where I wanted to be in the future. And he was definitely one of the biggest helping hands in that. Not to say that there wasn't 100 other people who helped me in very similar, if not the same ways. People like Grim, Katie Trey, amazing people all throughout that locker room that have definitely helped me get to the point where I am now. And without people like that, I definitely wouldn't be where I am now.
Well, to your point, like it's really important to have someone like that, like a Chris Basso, or someone on the level of Katie Trey as well, who are there looking out for not just people who are above them, but also their peers. Someone like you who is pretty new to the wrestling scene, and it's really good to hear that there aren't just one person looking out for everyone. It's a locker room full of people who want to help each other, to support each other, and that's a really important and honestly beautiful thing about wrestling as a whole. That it's evolved to the point where it's not a dog eat dog world. It's a supportive environment, and it's important for guys like you, Kit, who are finding your feet, who are finding your place in the world, and you can rely on these people to not just take advantage of you and get what they want and then just leave you in the dust. It's good that there's a support system.
Yeah, and especially getting in, like, I'm definitely very new in the grand scheme of like the timeline of being a pro wrestler. I'm still very fresh into wrestling. Like, I've only been wrestling for 2 years now. Like, in my mind, without the guidance of people that we have at RCW, in my mind, I would have thought, the first handful of years that you're into wrestling, you're just, you kind of pay your dues and know your place and kind of keep your head down and just sort of gain on all the knowledge that you can. And the idea of going elsewhere comes later. But there really are so many just super supportive people, trainers and people like that all around who've just always been about that mentality of like, don't just take what you've got and say that that's enough. Like, they really were of the mentality of do what you can to get on the radar of these other places and go elsewhere as soon as you can and gain that knowledge from elsewhere. And because of that, I really that was what gave me the courage to like branch out and reach out to other places, to go elsewhere. And now, you know, I've gone around to now I'm wrestling at ACW. I've wrestled for PWSA. Like I've gone around Adelaide and wrestled for, you know, a small handful of these other companies around Adelaide. And I never would have expected I would have been doing that within my first year or year and a half. But, you know, the people that I train with and that train me are just so all about furthering us that they really did push us to do that. So they're not, yeah, by no stretch are they ever only about themselves. They are absolutely all about, if you want to go and make your dream happen overseas and stuff, this is how you can make it happen. These are the steps you need to take, and they'll do everything they can to help you. And it has already helped me get to a point that I didn't think I would be at in my first 5 years of being a wrestler, let alone 2.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And like what you were saying, you know, you've competed in places like PWSA along with, you know, Riot City, which I think it's safe to say that's your home, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. It's where I definitely got my start. It's, you know, where to this day I still train every week and stuff like that. So as much as I've gotten to know some amazing people in, you know, the other companies around Adelaide, RCW is where I got my start. And I think in that regard, my my blood will always bleed green for, like, I'll never forget like what RCW has given me. And, you know, like I'm always going to appreciate that. So I think, yeah, in that regard, RCW will always be, you know, my home, because I wouldn't have gotten anywhere without them and without the people there that make it up.
Yeah, well said, absolutely. Along with, you know, the Adelaide circuit, you know, South Australia, ACT, Victoria, New South Wales, Northern Territory, West Australia, there are so many companies around Australia right now that, you know, it's inspiring to see the companies, even during this pandemic, that they're still succeeding and they're growing.
Yeah.
Kit, in your opinion, where do you see the Australian scene going?
Well, I think with that, like, the Australian scene, like, for a long time has been, from what I've noticed at least, it's been very like, you know about the Australian scene if you're in Australia. But then, you know, the same thing was said probably only a handful of years ago about something like the UK scene. And then WWE jumped on board with the UK scene, and all of a sudden now they've absolutely blown up all over the globe, and everyone is talking about the UK scene. And I think Australia is just starting to get on that radar of people from outside of Australia really starting to take a look and go, wow, Australia really does have some amazing talent. So I don't know. I definitely think, like, in my opinion, the peak of Australian wrestling is probably going on in places like, I like to think Riot City has, you know, obviously we've had like Rhea Ripley go on to WWE now. Brooksy is a regular in RCW, and he's going on to do some amazing things as well. And you've got places like Wrestle Rampage with Jonah Rock going on to now wrestle in NXT as Bronson Reed. And on top of that, you've also got Melbourne, which is doing absolutely incredible stuff. I would probably say Melbourne would be the peak of where I would like to see myself to go in terms of Australia, in terms of Australian wrestling at least. The hierarchy I would like to, I would probably imagine goes something like, once you make it to Melbourne and make it big in places like in MCW, for example, that would be when you'll probably most likely to move on to outside of Australia. I reckon somewhere like MCW is probably top of the mountain in Australia, and that's probably, yeah, where I would definitely say Melbourne is the place that would love to work towards getting to eventually.
Yeah, a lot of great competitors have gone through MCW, and not even to put RCW back at all. I would personally consider RCW to be the second, because of just how big these two companies have gotten just on sheer will. You are right. MCW has the benefit of being in Melbourne. It's a rich city full of trade and just there's a lot more of the wrestlers who come from overseas would always stop in Melbourne. So you have guys like Okada coming in, or Ospreay, for example, and they always stop in MCW. So that's helped it grow. And to be honest, I see RCW growing to that level as well. And you are definitely heading the right way to get to MCW. It's only a matter of time. Absolutely. Your talents there will be worthwhile, and the crowd will be crazy to not go.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I definitely hope so.
Absolutely. And you talk about the guys who have gone from MCW to new heights. You touched on Bronson, former MCW champion. You touched on Brooksy, current MCW champion, who still visits RCW and competes there today. But you also have guys like Slex, who have hit the American market as well, not just Bronson. You got and it's incredible and inspiring to see, especially for guys like you who are new. You're 2 years in at this point, but it's you have someone to look at and go, they're getting there. They're getting to the pinnacle of the industry, and it's
absolutely.
Yeah, I can only imagine personally what that would feel for someone like you and the guys.
It's legitimately inspiring getting to see these people actually do it, and knowing that the idea of you also eventually one day getting there is not just like a pipe dream. Like, it's been shown to be possible, and there's no better time for that being an Australian wrestler than right now, because it doesn't matter if you're a guy or a girl in the Australian wrestling scene. They're all, regardless of age, gender, size, like whatnot, the Australian wrestling scene is really showing everyone that you can make it. And not even just through one avenue. Like, now they've got people going off to Japan, going off to the UK, going to Ring of Honor, going to MLW and WWE. Like, there really is, whatever avenue you want to go down, like the top guys from Australian wrestling, the top guys and girls are just really showing that you can make it wherever you want to go if you put in that work. And it's really, really inspiring, and it definitely rings through the locker room here.
Yeah, absolutely. Australia has been overlooked for a while, but I think everyone here in Australia is getting to that point where not for much longer. We're going to be considered on par with the British scene at its height, and I think it's only a matter of time. Sure. But along with you talking about where you'd like to go, your aspirations in terms of your career in wrestling, what legacy do you want to leave with your time in professional wrestling?
That is actually a bit of a different question. I haven't really considered that. My approach sort of towards wrestling is taking every milestone as it comes. I know my own personal roadmap of my eventual end goals and what milestones I'll need to hit along the way to follow that roadmap, I guess, to eventually achieve that end goal. But in terms of a legacy, I don't know. I don't really ever think of a legacy as something that you can plan to leave. It's something that you sort of naturally leave. The best thing that I can do is try and be the best me that I can be, and always keep trying to evolve and adapt with the times and keep pushing myself further. And hopefully at the end of that, my legacy will be me making it to however far I can make it. But yeah, I don't really think a legacy is something that I would ever like. I don't really think anyone would ever necessarily, maybe I'm wrong in thinking it, but I don't think any of the all-time greatest wrestlers ever were ever really concerned about leaving a legacy as such. It was more a case of wanting to achieve the goal, grab that brass ring, and etc. like that. And in the process, they've left a legacy as a result. But I don't think the legacy is ever really like, the legacy has never really been much of a thought of mine. If anything, I almost try to treat my wrestling journey as it's my own personal journey that I get to share with everyone who comes to watch me wrestle or who watches any of my matches. Like it's a personal journey for me. I just want to do the best that I can, and any notoriety, any legacy that I leave behind would just be an added bonus. But it's a journey that I'm mostly focused on doing myself. Like, yeah, the fame or legacy is not really something that bothers me. I'm in it because of my personal love for it, not to be like the world's greatest wrestler. And if I ever got to that point, that would, be an added bonus on top, but it would never be my intention, if that makes sense.
Very humble, very well spoken. And it's meant a lot to not just me, but the people watching. Your fans at home, that you've taken the time out of your day. Your busy schedule with training and trying to be the best that you can be. So from all of us here, we really appreciate you taking the time today, man.
Oh no, that's all right. Any time in my day that I can dedicate more towards wrestling is never going to be a chore. I guarantee that. But no, I appreciate you having me here as well.
Oh, absolutely, man. Whenever you want to come on, just let us know.
Fantastic.
Is there anything else you'd like to say to your adoring fans?
Oh, just, I guess, to anyone who's struggling to get out to see some pro wrestling at the moment and is missing it all, just remember that this is not forever. This is only for now. And as long as we keep doing the right thing and keep, doing better, the sooner we're going to be able to get back to packing out rooms and being back in front of live pro wrestling and getting back to putting Australia on the map worldwide. It's just for now. So I'm keen to get past all of this, but to anyone who's struggling with waiting for it to pass, just know that it's not forever.
Fantastic. Kit Condor, thank you so much, man.
That's all right. Thank you for having me.